Hi and welcome to Acconeer annual general meeting in 2022. So for 2 years, due to COVID, we have not been able to meet with our shareholders physically. So it's great to be able to be back and meet with you all. And I hope you've enjoyed the demos we show outside. This presentation has basically 3 parts. First, I will do a number of standard slides, which I'm quite sure that many of you have seen before, but if there are new people seeing this movie, we think it's good to give some background. Then Mikael will make a presentation on what are we investing our money in and you know, what are we doing in our research and development. And then finally, I will talk a little bit about our commercial progress, but also what our focus will be for 2022. But first, explore the next sense. One of the things that are very unique with Acconeer is that we actually have a real innovation. Many companies that talk about innovations don't have them, but we actually do have a real innovation, and that is that we are being pulsed at coherent at the same time. What that means is that we can do extremely accurate measurements at the same time as we are very, very efficient in power consumption. And that's really one of the key reasons why we attract customers. Our objective is, of course, to be the smallest, the lowest power, and the lowest cost radar in the market, and we think we are already there. So we think we are leading that market at the moment. We have 4 segments, basically consumer electronics, smart cities and IoT, industrial and agriculture, and automotive. We have actually, this is 2 less than we had before, but we have put both robotics and health and care and fitness into consumer electronics. And the reason for that is that when we were looking at it, we thought that most of the robots that we are launching anyhow are consumer electronics products. So we think this is 4 more tangible industry segments, and I think it will be easier for people to understand what we're doing. Behind all of those 4 segments, there are many subsegments, and later in this presentation, I will go through those subsegments. What are our unique selling points? Well, I've already mentioned the fact that we're extremely accurate at the same time as we have very low power consumption, and that is what really makes us stand out in the marketplace. Of course, like most radars, we can do gestures, and see movements. When we say optimized integration, what we mean is really that we have built the smallest radar you can do physically, put everything, including the antennas, in one package. And it's 5 by 5 millimeters in area, and it's 0.8 millimeters high. Material detection is an area which we've talked about for a long time. Now we actually have a customer that have launched a lawnmower, grass and no grass. So it's an area where we researched for a long time, but now we actually have a launch customer. And robustness. Robustness is nothing particular to Acconeer, but it's a very, very important differentiator between radars and other sensors, such as cameras, ultrasound or infrared. How we are positioned in the market? Well, in this picture here, what you see up to the right, you see basically car radars that are rebanded to the 60 gigahertz band, and they consume watts as opposed to our milliwatts, and they are much longer range, but also much bigger and much more costly. So we don't really compete with those. It's 2 separate markets. We see a number of companies that are trying to go in our direction, and most tangibly in Infineon, that has been there for a long time, but also Socionext from Japan and Kaikutech from Taiwan. But what none of them have is pulse coherent radar, which means that even if they build the same size as we do, we are much more power efficient than they are. And we don't see that changing. Other technologies, we compete very much with other technologies, and here are some examples. When it comes to passive sensors like a magnetometer, they are very low in power consumption because a passive sensor doesn't send anything, they only listen, but they are not very robust and very susceptible to interference. We also compete with ultrasound, and we compete with infrared. They do consume more power than we do, but they are small and cheap, and can in many cases do the work that they're supposed to do. So there we see some tough competition sometimes. We are part of the 3D sensor market. It's a very healthy market. It's a roughly $3 billion market, and it's growing very fast. It's growing with almost 30% every year. So the market in which we are operating is very healthy and expanding a lot. Finally, I get a lot of a question about shortage of components and things like that. So I wanted to explain a little bit about our production process. So Global Foundries produces our wafers. They do that in Singapore. Then the wafers are sent to Acconeer in Korea, which manufactures our product, and then it's shipped to Presto in Denmark, where we have our production testing, and then we have a ready product. From when we put the purchase order until we have a final product that we can ship to customer, takes roughly 8 months today. One of the announcements we made in this quarter or in last quarter was that we are starting to work directly with Global Foundries. Previously, we had an intermediary between us and Global Foundries that basically aggregated many purchase orders and then put purchase orders toward Global Foundries. In this time when all companies are allocation, and allocation means that the foundry tells you how many wafers you can get. We've had a long discussion with Global Foundries because we are a company that's growing very fast, and when you grow very fast, you need to have much bigger allocation next year than you have current year. But they think what we're doing is really interesting, and we've agreed that we will source wafers directly from them. What that means is two things. Today, when we pay for a wafer, we actually pay at T-8. When we put orders towards Global Foundries, we actually pay at T-, or when we receive the wafers, net 30 days. So we've actually improved the timing when we need to pay out cash, and wafers are expensive. Every wafer or every lot is almost $100,000. We've improved that with 6 months, which is actually going to be very beneficial for our working capital. Also, of course, when you don't have any media, someone in between you and the fab, you can reduce the price you pay. But at the same time, all fabs all over the world have increased their pricing. For us, that actually evens out, so it's more or less ±1. But it actually makes our product more competitive. This is actually a slide that we showed last year, and what we said was, what are we going to do during 2021? And the rest of the slides here are basically exemplifications on what we actually did. But the first one here is that we had as an objective to reduce our system cost, which is the system in which our sensor is put, that becomes less costly, improve the cost of our sensor, but also develop the A121 and get that to market. And we think we've done all of them. Yeah. We also said that we would work towards launching many more customers with many more use cases. And in the rest of the presentation, you will see actually quite some detail on different types of use cases we are working with. What we said was that we would launch a lot more customers and help them grow. And as we've said before, we used to have a goal of launching 5 customer products every quarter. Now we increase that to 10, and we think we can sustain that. Deepen the cooperation with Alps Alpine and develop the A2. Very important to grow our business in the automotive industry, but also secure next generation radar. Yeah. And aim for very large corporates that can produce a lot of volumes and help us grow the top line. And we think we've done that as well with the latest consumer electronics launches that we have presented. So we think actually we have done more or less what we set out to do in 2021, and now we go into a little bit about what we are going to do in the future. So Mikael Egard, which is one of the co-founders of Acconeer, will present what activities we are doing in order to enhance our product portfolio.
Thank you very much, Lars. Yes, what we invest our money in is innovation. And here you see our new offices that are, as we are, they are very innovative, they're open, it's a very good creative area. What it allows us is to grow the team. So given these new facilities, we can grow the team to almost double from what we were before. And also, as important, we have increased our lab area with about four times. And that's really key in making sure that we can deliver with quality to our customers. And what we deliver is, of course, our sensors. And here you see our sensor roadmap. So the A11, the pulse coherent radar that is in the market today. What we're working on now is getting the A121 to market later this year. What it features is improved power consumption, simplified integration, which means that the customer can decrease their total system cost. They don't need to have as many components for the sensor to operate. Enhanced data quality, I will come back to that a bit more in detail, what that means. And then we have increased range and increased temperature range as well, which is important for the car industry. So here we are in the final stages. Of course, we invest a lot in developing use cases for both A11 and A121 right now. For the A211, we are really in the implementation phase of the sensor. And the A2 is all about taking all the good things with A121 and adding multiple antennas. And adding multiple antennas means that we can have angular resolution from a single sensor. So from one sensor you can detect not only the distance and velocity to the object, but also the angle to the object that's moving. And that's very important in many applications, gesture control, the automotive cases within car cabin detections, for instance. We're also adding processing in the sensor, which will help the customer to create more cost-efficient systems and do more efficient signal processing. The enhanced data quality. So what we're doing for A121 is that we're taking the features of A11. It's coherent, it's efficient, distance and velocity measurements. Previously for A11, you had to set up the sensor in 3 different ways to obtain different combinations of these features. We did that to have efficient signal processing for the different parts. But what we can do now with the A121 is that we can combine all of them in one single data stream. So the customer receives all the information in a single go. And this is a huge benefit, especially for customers who are doing more advanced applications. We just added 3 examples here. They can improve the performance in terms of measuring flowing surfaces, like in sewage monitoring. They can have more features for detecting material, such as grass for the lawnmower, for increased performance and robustness. And the same goes for gesture classification. For instance, for access control for the trunk lid opener, here the customer will be able to add more gestures and avoid more false detections. And to demonstrate this, we have here our new evaluation kits that's due for release later this year, featuring the A1-1. And we will demo these different features now. Okay, so what you see here are 3 different representations of the single data stream of the A1-1. In the top, you will see the amplitude. We will show you the phase in the middle, which demonstrates how coherent the system is. And on the bottom, you will be able to see both distance and velocity resolved simultaneously. So if I put my hand in, you can see it's detected. You can see the amplitude at the top. If I try to hold my hand very still, you can see that the phase points in the middle of fairly still. It's extremely hard to hold the hand still enough. And that's of course the feature we use to detect heartbeats, that even the smallest movement is detected as a change in phase. At the bottom, if I start moving my hand back and forth, you can see that both distance and velocity changes as I move back and forth towards the sensor. And this is of course an evaluation kit. We will release it later this year. We're still working hard on this, but it demonstrates all of the features that they can be obtained from the same data stream. This improved data quality is of course very important for the customers to explore the next sense and develop innovative use cases. And of course, very important for us in the research that we do on different use cases. On this slide, we show 3 different projects where we have external collaboration and external funding. So the first one is breathing detection, where we're working with Sleepys and University of Gothenburg. We have presence localization, where we're working with Lund University on a Wallenberg AI project. This is very targeted towards the A2, using multiple antennas to detect several objects. The next one is in-ear gesture control, where we have developed the first prototype together with the Imagimob and OSM. And then we're now moving into the phase where we apply the knowledge from that project into the A2 development as well. So this is for the future research. The current product lineup looks like this. So it's based on the A1-1 pulse coherent radar sensor. We take that sensor and integrate it with a processor to construct modules. So we have 3 different modules: high performance module, IoT module, and entry module. And we do this to make it easier for customers to get to market. It will require less development effort from them, but also it shortens their time to market, which is very important. For each of the 4 products, we have an evaluation kit, and we also have a lens kit to allow the customer to easily evaluate if they need a lens and how the lens should be constructed. The customer gets the software from our website and then download our exploration tool from GitHub. It's in open source, and having an open approach to make it easy for the customer to explore the next sense is really at the heart of what we do. And this slide shows an typical example for how a customer approaches our product and gets to launch. And as we want to have many customers, and many of these customers have not worked with radar before, we invest a lot in having documentation and references to make it easy for them. So typically they get inspired, direct sales, a trade show online or through our distributors. They go to one of the distributors, most often an online distributor, and buy our EVK, get the software from our website, evaluate the use case, and to do that, they use the exploration tool to get easily started. And then after that, they go into the phase where they actually start the development, system design, hardware design, and software design. And for all of that, we have documentation reference files, schematics, layouts, everything they need to easily get to market and launch. And for use cases where we see a large amount of customers doing the same use case, we shorten the time even more by taking that specific use case and doing a very dedicated ref app and documentation, which more or less means that they have a ready product just to integrate on their side. For cases which we haven't taken that far, but we still want to get to the market, we have what we call Innovation Lab. And here we present areas which are that we're working on and that we really want to say to customers, look here is something to start from. At Innovation Lab, we have examples on gesture control, on speed measurements, on virtual button, different examples, and it will continue to grow. At the heart of this, to make it easy for customers to get to market, are modules. They are a very important component, both for evaluation, but also to having an actual product to put on the market. And we have developed this offer to make sure that the customer can always select the right product for them. So it's a balance between processing power and cost of the module. And we right now have a very good lineup. There is always something for the customer to choose from. We will be investing more in this and adding modules for A121 as well, of course. And we're also investing in building more variants on A111 actually, to make sure that we tackle the component shortage, to make sure that there's always something for the customer available. Then I'll hand over back to Lars, and we'll talk more about how we get to the market.
Thanks, Mikael. So, a little bit about how we get to market. We have direct sales. Direct sales we mainly have to customers which we have run a customer project. Now, we are trying to run about 20 customer projects in parallel. What qualifies to be a customer project is really two things. Either it's a customer with a very high volume or potential volume, or it's a customer who wants to do some very new and innovative use case where we want to make sure and help them that when they get to market, it works well. Because if it works well for them, then we have a great reference. So, as I said, we run a number of customer projects and to those customers, we usually don't want to share margin with the disti, so we ship directly to them after the project. We also sell via distis, and there's a slide on that which I will show. And then system integrators. And system integrators are companies who take our product, they build a product which they then their turn sell to some other company. Absalpine is a very good example of that takes our product, builds, for instance, a kick sensor, and then sells that to a car OEM. What we've not worked very much with previously is actually other module providers. We do our own, but there is always a lot of other types of modules you can do. But now we have a number of them in pipeline, so I'm quite sure that during 2022 we will also be launching module providers. And an example of that can be a company who's building an ATEX certified module, which means that it's certified to be in explosive environments. That's nothing we wanted to do ourselves, so we are very happy to have a customer do a module like that. And then, of course, we can work with other semiconductor companies, and you know, we be a part of their product portfolio. We have not focus on that, and we're not taking that very far, but it's still something that we occasionally discuss with other parties. Most important, we sell via a distributor network. The main reason for setting this up is that if you want to become global and if you want to go to market very fast, you have to have help. You can't build everything yourselves. So we have two online distis, DigiKey and Mouser, which are the two biggest one in the world. That were selected to work with us. But we have in all important regions also local distis. And the reason for that is that for each customer, wherever they are in the world, there should be at least 2 channels from where they can source their product, and then they can compete, create some competition between different distis when they, add their margin on our product. New for last year is really 2 things. Nexty we added, we are very proud over. That's a part of Toyota Group, and they are our disti towards the automotive industry. Another comment to make here is that we have a disti for Russia, but we have stopped shipments to Russia, so that's not happening anymore. It's a very small part of our business, so we've selected not to continue that. 75 launch customers globally. When we talk about customer launch, I think one important factor is how do we judge if it's launch or not? And there are 2 things we want to see. We want to see that it is in the market, on a website, or it's being sold in a shop or something like that, we really can see. And we also want to be able to trace that they've bought at least 1,000 units from one of our distis or from us. And the reason for that is that you see a lot of companies who talk about having pulse coherent radars, but if we can't see the 1,000 units, when we don't call it a launch yet. We also measure how many get by more than 100 units, and internal we call that design wins. And the reason for that is that when you are buying components in hundreds, then you're doing some serious prototyping. When you're buying in thousands, then you are actually out doing something in the market space. So that's how we judge it. EU has become our biggest market. Previously it was China. China has been weaker the last few quarters due to COVID, but those are our greatest market segments. And then you can see our different market segments where actually IoT and smart cities is the biggest segment, followed by industrial and agriculture, and then you have consumer electronics. And in automotive, we don't count any launches yet, but as I've said in my quarterly report, we think we are very, very close. A little bit about our subsegments. So here you see the subsegments for IoT and smart cities. And the green arrow you see is basically, do we have a launch customer or not? Traffic, there we actually count 2 different use cases. One is actually turning on and off lamps in streets, depending on if there are people or not that needs the illumination. And secondly, touchless buttons, where we see actually multiple customers launching on our sensor in different parts of the world. If you go into buildings, it's actually, and what I would say, the reason why we win in traffic is really we have the smallest sensor and it's outdoor environment. So it has to be robust. And that means that you can't solve it with ultrasound and infrared. If you go inside buildings, competition actually becomes a little bit more difficult due to the fact that IR and ultrasound works indoors, but we still win inside because we do perform better, but we are a little bit more expensive. But there you talk about touchless buttons, no customer launch yet, but we think we have in pipeline. You have bathrooms, are people present or not, or shower systems, are people present or not, and then you have lamp systems indoors. And as everyone knows, if you have an ultrasound sensor, if you sit still, after a while you have to wave your arms in order to switch on the light again. That doesn't happen with our sensor. So we can increase the performance of the existing systems. Yeah. We also have a segment we call infrastructure, and here again, main benefit we have is also the fact that small, power efficient, but also robust. Measuring the distance to one of them we call structural integrity, measuring, for instance, the distance to a railway track, is it moving or not, and if it moves too much, then you may have a problem. But it can also be bridges. Is the bridge in place or is it moving over time? Is something that people want. And we have customers in both of those areas. They haven't reached the numbers of 1,000 sold units yet, so we haven't called them launches, but they are trialing their solutions. Measuring levels in tanks, we have many examples of measuring levels in dustbins. Is the same. A new or emerging area where we see we have extremely good fit with our sensor is really sewage systems, where today they're using our sensor to measure the distance, but we are also in the process of seeing if we can see the direction and velocity of the water inside the system. And if we can do that, we can actually replace some very expensive systems with our small and inexpensive radar. And then, of course, parking. Very typical outdoor parking, we win 100%. We think we have 100% of the world market, and that is due to power consumption, but also robustness and our size. When you go indoors, it's actually much more difficult for us, because then people do cable to the parking space, because they also have green and red lamps where they indicate if it's empty or not. So power consumption is not such a big differentiator, and then cost becomes a differentiator, and that's more difficult for us to compete, but we have the ambition to do it. And then charging station for electrical vehicles. There you want to know if there's a car or not. So basically, if there is a car but it's not charging, then maybe you can send someone and say move so someone else can charge their car. Use the system more efficiently. Examples of these customers in parking. Here you have one Chinese customer. You have IT solutions in Europe, Hancom in Korea, and HR in Taiwan. As I said, we have more than 20 of these types of customers on a global basis. Measurements in tanks or sewage systems. We have multiple in Europe, but examples here is one in China and one in Taiwan, and you also have Packwise in Germany, who is a very interesting and successful company that tracks where IBC tanks are and if they're full or not. So next segment, industry and agriculture. Here we have not as much progress as in the previous segment, but these are also slower moving industries, but we are 100% sure that they will come. So industry machines, and there you particularly want to measure distance or something, distance to ground, or distance for your hydraulic system, or distance in a tank on the machine, or something like that. Silos is very easy for us. There we have launch customers. Measuring levels in silos, very difficult or different to measuring tanks with water or liquid. But we have a number of customers who have been successful in solving that use case. And then cattle, and there you have everything from counting cattle to also measuring size of cattle. And we feel very certain that we have customer projects here, and we will make sure that they launch and it's going to be successful. In industry, inventory control, it can be in a container. Is the container full or not, or are there stuff in the container or not? But it can also be something like if you have a rotor blade or for a windmill on a lorry, is that rotor blade moving or not, because if it gets damaged in transport, it's very expensive. And then also distance between wagons on train systems when they connect to each other. What is the distance, and are they, driving towards each other too fast? Is one of the systems we have where we have a launch. And then we have industry automation. And in industry automation, we have a number of customer projects in pipeline, but most notably is that they're very high volume opportunities. Consumer electronics, as you can see here, we put our robots here. And here you have one robot that detects presence, one robot that does object detection, and then actually our first robot lawnmower that does both object detection but also material detection. Baby monitor, we have customer projects on this, and we feel very certain that that's going to come. And then basically you have a presence keyboard, which is one of the things we show here today. And earphones, which in the area where we have worked together with partners, and we've shown both over-the-air headphones and in-ear headphones, and we are working towards launching the first customers in this area. So examples of products here, you have the two robots in Japan, or a third robot from a larger consumer electronics company in Japan, and you have our robot lawnmower that was launched earlier this year. In the automotive segment, we're basically talking about two different use cases right now. One is interior detection, but what is important to realize that is that our system solves many different use cases. So one is, of course, child presence detection, and that is for safety. Is someone leaving a child and locking the door? So you can issue an alarm. There are legislative drivers for this in the US, but in Europe it's based on recommendations. But then, with the same system, you're also measuring which seat are people sitting in, and when you do that, you can take away the expensive pressure sensors that are being used today. And then the last one is basically theft alarm. And we do all functions with our system. Now, in the way this works is that in a 5-seated car, you use 5 sensors, and in a 7-seated car, you use 7. So for us, it becomes a very high volume opportunity. And then access control, it can be either the trunk of a car, or it can be a sliding door, but you open and close with your foot. We're doing very well in automotive, and the progress that Alpine has is great. So we said in the last quarter report that we are very sure that we will have cars launched this year with our sensors. We already got purchase order last year from the car industry, and we have shipped more than 50,000 sensors towards the automotive industry. So where they are right now is somewhere between our Disti, Nexti, and which send them to different factories of Alpine, which manufacture their boxes, which they ship to automotive manufacturers that install them in their cars, and then the car come out. So our sensors are somewhere in the middle of that, and that's why we say that we are sure that we will have car launches fairly soon. So just to summarize where we are commercially, we are still selling more than 4 EVKs every day, which we think is a great number. We've increased the amount of customer launches we say we're going to do every quarter from 5 to 10, and that's basically based on the very big amount of customer projects we see maturing, but also the amount of companies who are buying sensors in hundreds and are doing serious prototyping. We've sold more than 50,000 modules. We could have sold many more if we had been able to source more components. And we are getting very, very close to the first 1 million sensor shipped. What that leads to is, of course, top line that's growing very fast. We are growing with more than 100% every year, and we're still selling with very, very good margins. The business is progressing very healthy. Finally, what are the focuses for 2020? Well, we need to get A121 out to the market, and we are working very hard with that. Then, of course, new use cases, both on A11, but also now new use cases on A121, and see if some of the use cases where A11 was not sufficient, if we can solve those with A121. Still, a lot of new customers launches and help existing customers grow. Focus on our development effort of the A2 and our product with Subsegments, and make sure that we actually get the first tape out already this year. And then, as always, focus on very large customers and accounts, which will help us drive our top line. So those are the things we see in front of us this year. We don't see any big strategy shifts because we think we are doing the right things. We just need to do more of it and continue to grow at the rate that we are growing today. So that's actually the last slide from us today. And thank you very much for listening.